All right, y'all. We're doing chapter 8 of Flawed Dogs. This is one of my favorite parts of the story. I absolutely love this part, especially the ending, beginning of the next chapter. So, this is chapter 8. If you remember when we left off in chapter 7, there's a whole lot of commotion going on the grounds of McLeod Heavenly Acres, and Uncle Hamish told Heidi that he's giving it all to her. It's all hers, and he wants to introduce that land and all the happenings and goings on to her. And she's kind of taken back, like she's just a kid, and he's gonna give this all to her. That seems kind of weird and crazy. And as she looks out the window, the window. As she looks out the window, she sees this fancy dog show going on. People are all dressed up, fancy hats, fancy clothes, big white tents, drinks, hors d'oeuvres, probably like butlers and servers and stuff, passing around appetizers and such. And so she is on her way out to see what's going on with all that. And keep in mind, Sam the lion, her dog, well, pseudo dog, the dog that joined her at the airport, is now in her backpack. Chapter 8, $180,000. Out. There's that word again, popping into her head for the second time today, pressing on the inside of her skull as she hurried through the front door toward the McLeod Heavenly Acres gate. Out, out. Now this word too. Away. Also these. Go now, quick, before anyone pulls you back into this cuckoo land of demented dog dips. She passed Violet, carrying a tray of champagne glasses toward the backyard. Baby Bruno strapped happily across her back. Heidi, where are you going? Fiji. She kept moving and then suddenly stopped at the gate, remembering the dachshund bouncing around in her bag. She pulled the dog out, set him on the lawn at the edge of the woods, where he wobbled a bit as he looked up at her. That was funny, she said. What's next, partner? Shh, quiet, go. You're liberated. Go join a pack of wolves. He looked at her squarely. I have to tell you, banana taffy is my new favorite thing. If you remember back, she gave him a little bit of banana taffy to keep him quiet, and he was chewing it. Also, anytime you see, especially if you're following along, if you see the text in italics when it's the dog, he's not really saying that. Really, he's barking because he's a dog. Dogs don't talk. But these are what the words are that he's saying. It's like somebody's translating dog. And so as he barks and yips and stuff, this book is translating that for us. But what she's hearing is him barking. So when she says, shh, quiet, they're going to hear you, that's because he's barking. Heidi began backing away, but the little dog followed. No, go, go, she yelled. They don't allow dogs in Fiji. They pee on all the coconuts. This was a guess. Her tone turned angry. Go, very far away. I'm doing the same. The dachshund kept following. Heidi put her face down to his and was about to scream louder when he licked her on the underside of her nose. She froze at this unexpected attack. A familiar shriek from behind made her jump. She turned to see Mrs. Nutbush from the airport, still in her blue fur coat, run in and scoop up the dachshund, holding it above her head. My little lost Douglas Tooft! Where have you been, naughty boy? The dog looked as if he was about to be eaten, which, in a sense, it was. Heidi looked down at the road to freedom, and then she looked back at Mrs. Nutbush, terrified dog in hand. Ugh, muttered Heidi under her breath as she pulled the little dog from the woman's grasp, giving him the sternest, angry nun look that she could muster. Naughty boy is right. Always chasing big, blue, she looked at Mrs. Nutbush, critters. Well, now, who are you and what do you have? Why do you have my Douglas tufted Austrian red dachshund? Stammered the flustered woman, reaching for the shaking animal. Heidi backed away. I'm Heidi McLeod, and this is, she needed a name, and quick, her imagination failed her. This is Sam, my dog Sam. Sam? Sam, repeated Mrs. Nutbush, suspicious. Yes, good old Sam the Lion. An entirely perfect name, Sam the Lion. Heidi looked down at Sam and gave him a little eyebrow flash, which is more a warning than a wink, meaning, hey, we're both into it up to our butts now, pal. Sam looked back at her in panic. "Do not hand me back to the blue, hairy woman," he said. "I will throw up my taffy and fries on her." Mrs. Nutbush narrowed her eyes and leaned into Heidi. "I think the police might like to know why a discarded, snot-nosed orphan McLeod has a one-of-a-kind $180,000 Douglas dachshund," she sneered. Heidi's eyes popped. $180,000? Heidi looked down at Sam. "Do you poop rubies?" "Why would you have such a dog?" demanded Mrs. Nutbush. Good question. Heidi opened her mouth. Nothing. It was a gift from her uncle, said a voice from behind. It was Miss Violet holding a punch bowl containing a humming baby Bruno. Goodness, no reason to involve the police with such an honest misunderstanding, Mrs. Nutbush, she said as she laid a gentle hand atop Heidi's strewn hair and stared carefully into the girl's surprised face. "You're late, Miss McLeod. The competition is ready to start. Take Sam the lion there and hurry on to go register." Heidi, too confused to argue, moved back through the gate, past the huge dog-shaped bushes, and toward the house. She looked back at Miss Violet, who gave her an eyebrow flash. Nobody before had ever given her an eyebrow flash. A smiling Violet turned to a shocked Mrs. Nutbush. Violet daubed her eyes with the corner of her apron. Heidi and Sam's first big show. A big moment for all of us. Sniff. Miss Nutbush snorted a suspicious snort, pushed past Violet, and stomped after the girl holding her $180,000 Douglas dachshund. Heidi walked as if in a trance back toward the dreadful place that she had just run from. Sinister cosmic forces beyond her understanding had seized her life, she figured. All she could do was put one foot in front of the other and not fall over. Carrying Sam and his Douglas whatever thing, she stumbled toward the jostling crowd in their trash can lid hats and their hydraulic bosoms and their powdered pufferized dogs, and the gathering realization that this was going to be the end of her life. She found herself at the end of a long line of fancy people with fancy dogs at the center of the McLeod Heavenly Acres back lawn. She stood frozen in dazed terror, gripping Sam close to her chest, upside down. Huh? She was in a dog show. The terror. The competition was about done. Heidi became dimly aware of people clapping and cheering. She looked up to see a beaming Mrs. Beaglehole standing back in line after showing the show-stopping Cassius. The people in the surrounding lawn chairs clapped loudly, while Mrs. Beaglehole smiled triumphantly and made a little bow to the crowd. The Big Poodle had won the Piddleton Best in Show for the past 3 years. He would grease this one, and Mrs. Beaglehole knew it. The World Championship Westminster Dog Show in New York City lay in the future. Cassius would win Best in Show, the most beautiful dog on the planet. They both knew it. "Wait a minute, ladies and gentlemen," announced a man with a microphone and a clipboard at the center of the lawn. "A last-minute entry has been added. What a lovely surprise. It's Heidi McLeod, Hamish McLeod's niece, and her Austrian red dachshund, Ham the lion." "Sam," corrected Heidi in the tiniest whisper. The crowd went dead silent. Shocked Mrs. Beaglehole and Cassius spun their heads to stare at her at the end of the line. Then a frantic low murmuring raced throughout the crowd. "The little orphaned McLeod girl. Oh, McLeod hasn't showed up at the dog show for 10 years. Oh, she looks like her mother. They say at school she set the nuns' toilets to flush in reverse." Heidi heard all of this, which made her mortification complete. She wondered if the others could hear the pounding of her heart. "Miss McLeod and Sam the lion," said the woman in the center, gesturing toward Heidi. "The judges await." Heidi stared. The judges awaited what? Here was the dog in her hands. What else did they need? The clipboard woman gestured her to do something. What? What did people do at dog shows? Hundreds of eyes were on her as her panic slipped into action, and she instantly went into her best guess. She put Sam the lion on the ground, and then she began to dance. She'd been good at dancing, and her freestyle was legendary among the students at St. Egregius. egregious. So she played Elvis's hound dog. He ain't nothing but a hound dog. She played Elvis's hound dog in her head, humming with her eyes closed and let it all fly. Sam stared up at Heidi's windmilling arms and legs and wondered if that simply is what all human beings suddenly did around noon every day. So he began to dance too, hopping, twirling, bouncing. Heidi smiled. He looked like he was on a hot skillet. Then Sam noticed Mrs. Nutbush. She was in the crowd and moving closer. Dead set he figured on eating him. So Sam did what worked before and shot up Heidi's leg and to find high ground. In this case, the top of her head. Boof. The tittering began. Tittering is polite laughter that never stays polite. Eventually, all 300 dog lovers were spewing champagne punch through their noses in open hysterics. Heidi only danced harder while Sam hung on. He found himself nose to nose with the judge. Her eyes went to the top of his head. The judge stopped laughing. The she said in an odd whisper, normally safe for matters of religion or premium gossip. Her mouth dropped and then slowly, one by one, Piddleton's fanciest citizens began murmuring the same thing. The Douglas tooth. The Douglas tooth. That's the Douglas. He's got the Douglas tooth. And one by one they stood in solemn reverence, as if the Pope himself had suddenly alighted upon Heidi McLeod's head. The most supernaturally beautiful dog that any has ever seen before was before them. Sam's perfect proportions, crowned with his tuft born of almost inconceivably careful breeding, was almost more than many could take. Fleming Croup in the back fainted, and she needed a good slapping. For a moment, Heidi thought that her dancing had won the crowd over, but then she realized that all eyes were on Sam. She looked up at her uncle's window. The curtains were parted enough for her to see that his face peered down, and suddenly it was gone. The judge approached and handed Heidi a large silver trophy cup while people clapped. Heidi had never won anything before in her life other than timeouts in the closet from the nuns. She looked around at the grinning, cheering strangers who suddenly didn't seem so strange anymore. The judge tied a blue ribbon around Sam's neck and smiled at the dog. Sam grinned back. I love banana taffy. Woof, he said. I absolutely love that picture. It's like probably one of my favorite pictures in the book. There's a couple of them, but man, that one's a good one. Just the pure enjoyment of Heidi and Sam the Lion dancing together. What a great part of the story. Sam began to dance as well, hopping, twirling, and bouncing. Now, if you have a dog and you've ever had a dog dance with you, it is quite a sight to behold, especially if it's a big dog, even funnier if it's a little dog and they're all just like hopping around and just having a good time. I don't know if there's anything better than that in life. That's a sweet moment. So anyway, that's the end of that chapter. And until next time, my friends, peace.